The gravy train for FHA borrowers is coming to an end. In fact, there was a mortgage letter released a little over a week ago that is telling us now that the Trump administration announced that they're going to be ending the relaxed FHA waterfall from the COVID-19 era. What is the FHA waterfall? Basically, it's a program that helped people that had FHA loans stay in their homes a lot longer than they otherwise would be able to if it wasn't for all the financial assistance from the government. Myself and other YouTube channels have covered this story recently over the past couple of months. Basically, that shows you that the government is intentionally withholding on foreclosing on FHA borrowers. But since the beginning of the year, that has started to change. And here's what the ultimate problem was. All of the loss mitigation policies that were implemented during the pandemic were supposed to be temporary. Then they ended up being these permanent plans that extended people's ability not to pay their mortgages for years and years, all the way forward to today. And so by having these loss mitigation policies in place much longer than they needed to be, it has hurt the Mutual Mortgage Insurance Fund, as well as it's hurting taxpayers. And it's also set up a lot of borrowers who got an FHA loan for failure, and has also enabled other FHA borrowers to abuse the current process. So the entire thing is broken as usual when it comes to government systems. So what's changing? Well, they are going to be limiting borrower eligibility for receipt of any permanent home retention loss mitigation option to once every 24 months. So if you take advantage of any of the programs that FHA has in order to basically delay a foreclosure or to put your payments on pause, anything like that, you can only do that now once every 2 years. It can't be, well, it's on and off again. You know, I lost my job this month and then 3 months later, same thing again. No, it's not going to be like that anymore. And really all this is doing is reverting to how things worked pre-pandemic. So this is nothing revolutionary. It's just making the FHA program work the way it's supposed to. I'll roll a list on screen of some of the things that are changing right now and some of the deadlines. But the most important one is the top one that says that they are permanently sunsetting the pandemic loss mitigation options on September 30th of 2025. So by the middle of this summer, it's all going to be over with. And why is this important, you might ask? Well, because this has a major impact on the housing market from multiple different angles. The first one is the fact that there are a lot of homes out there that should be on the market for sale or should already be in the foreclosure process that are not, because the government has artificially kept people in these homes at the expense of the American taxpayer. And like this article states, it has also made it easy for people to abuse this system in the meantime. You have people intentionally not paying their mortgages and intentionally able to sort of, get rich and have their housing payments subsidized by the government, which is not right. I understand people need a little help here and there, and there are times where people do need assistance, and that's what these fallback programs and safety nets are for, but they're definitely not there so people can take full advantage of it even when they don't need it. And let's not forget about the overall impact that this whole thing has had on the housing market. Like, for example, interest rates are a little bit lower now than they were, let's say, over a year ago when they were well over 7%, but they're still quite high. But traditionally, we would expect home prices to come down along with the sales volume coming down when the interest rates decline. And we've only seen the sales volume go down, but we haven't seen the prices come down that much. However, that is starting to change. You're seeing a lot of areas in the country now where that is happening. So the other way this hurts the overall housing market and FHA borrowers is because the government has been allowing these people to take out increasingly larger mortgages that they cannot afford to pay back, especially by conventional lending standards. And on top of that, if they miss a payment or they fall on hard times, they bail them out once again. Not only did you get qualified to buy a home you can't afford, but then surprise, surprise, when you actually can't make the payment, what do? They put you in a program like what we just talked about, where you don't have to pay, sometimes for years and years at a time, that people have been taken advantage of. And so this has helped perpetuate and build the current state of the housing market into the massive bubble that it is today. And to be clear, these problems have started over a decade ago, because around 2008, back when the housing market was completely in the tank, what happened was FHA started enabling more home buyers who debt liabilities exceeded 43% of their income to qualify for government-backed loans. Take a look at this stat right here. In 2007, 35% of new FHA borrowers had a debt-to-income ratio above 43%. That is already way too high, but if you think that's bad, by the end of 2016, it had climbed to 54%. Now today, that number is 65%, guys. So 65% of FHA borrowers have a debt-to-income ratio of over 43%, meaning that basically half of their income is going towards debt payments each month. And these people are qualifying to buy a house, which is a giant liability that ends up costing you far more than you ever think it will. So how do you think that's going to turn out? Is it really a surprise when the delinquency rates start spiking on these type of loans? Absolutely not. Property tax assessments are here, especially if you are a homeowner in the state of Texas. And here's the problem. Property tax assessments are way too high, and they use outdated methods of valuations that end up costing you thousands of extra dollars unnecessarily each year. And that's why today's video is sponsored by Ownwell. Ownwell helps handle the protest process on your behalf, so all you have to do is sign up for the service. It's 100% risk-free, and there are no upfront costs to you as a homeowner. You will only pay if Ownwell ends up actually saving you money off your property tax bill. On average, Ownwell customers save about $1,100 per customer, and by the time you see this video, you probably have already received your property tax assessment. And even if the assessment is lower than last year, you could still be potentially overpaying and end up with a higher tax bill due to millage rate increases. That's why it's imperative, particularly if you are a Texas homeowner right now, to sign up at ownwell.com/Michael Bordenero. In fact, the deadline to protest for you is May 15th of 2025, and missing this deadline means that you're going to be locked into potentially higher property taxes for another year. And here's the best part. If you sign up with Ownwell, not only is it free to sign up with them, but they will protest your property taxes every year moving forward on your behalf without you lifting a finger. So if you own your home, go to ownwell.com/Michael Bordenero and find out how much Ownwell can save you risk-free. And so that means the housing market is no longer based on free market capitalism. It is based on an artificial market that is not based in reality. And this is one of the major reasons why myself and many others believe that we are heading towards a housing market collapse. We are going to see the house of cards come down. It's not a matter of if, but when. And like I've highlighted on the channel many times, we've already seen the cracks start to form in many different areas. You see delinquencies going up. You see consumer debt on the rise. You're starting to see very, very low transaction numbers going back 30 plus years to people who are buying homes. It's over, guys. And to give you an idea of how bad things are right now, the FHA program oversees 7.8 million active loans right now, and about 14% of them are currently in default. This means that over 1 million homeowners in the program are currently behind on their payments, and the government has covered it up. The FHA made over 500,000 incentive payments to loan servicers over the past year in order to prevent foreclosures, which is nearly as many new mortgages as they written. And without these incentive payments, these people would have already been foreclosed on. This is essentially the FHA taking taxpayer money and giving it to the loan servicers and saying, no, don't foreclose on these people, leave it alone, let them stay in the house, we'll make the payment. So the result of this is that the FHA loan portfolio that is held by the federal government is now far more risky than it even was back in 2008 when we had the last major housing crash, because a lot of the loans in that portfolio are being subsidized and basically bailed out month after month as we speak. Right now, it's being estimated that about 79% of FHA first-time buyers have 1 month or less in financial reserves, which is nowhere near enough to even make a single mortgage payment if their household expenses were to rise just a little bit. And everybody, as we know it, is experiencing an increase in cost of living right now. Here's a house that I walked past initially at the end of 2024 when they were asking almost $1.8 million. And this house was actually sold in January of 2024 for only $1.3 million. So trying to turn around, make a quick $500,000 profit here. But clearly that's not working because price reduction after price reduction, the price has now come down about $1.5 million and still no buyers yet. So this house has been sitting on the market for about 5 months with no activity. People are starting to wisen up and no one's going to be willing to pay you $500,000 more for the same exact house that was just purchased a year ago and literally nothing has been done to it and it's just been sitting here empty collecting dust. Those days are over. So at the end of the day, all of these government programs are hurting homeowners and home buyers everywhere. And to give you an idea of how and why, think about it like this. When any entity or lender allows you to borrow more than you can actually afford to pay back, this puts you personally in a risky financial position. And, it's like giving your kid a loaded gun and hoping that nothing happens. It's not really a good plan for success. And then what they do is they play little games like this. So if you miss 5 payments of $4,000, that's $20,000 in missed mortgage payments. And then what they'll do is they'll reduce your mortgage payment by $1,000 a month for about 3 years. And then they'll add an extra $36,000 to the end of your mortgage, which puts you even deeper into debt and on the hook for more, which also means if you want to sell your house and your house is losing value, there's a good chance that you might not be able to sell that house for a profit, which means now you are doing a short sale. So now if somebody in this position has an extra $56,000 in total debt added to the end of their loan, and if you miss more payments, then the lender will go through the whole process again, essentially tacking on more and more debt that you owe on this property and lowering your mortgage payment. That's how they're artificially keeping people in homes right now. And so this leads to a situation where we have a lot of foreclosures and short sales starting to pop up again, which is going to be the end result of the failure of this program. And with all these foreclosures come layoffs. People start getting laid off, they lose their jobs, stock values decline even further. They're already saying that the Dow Jones right now is on track to have its worst April since April of 1928. So think about that one for a minute. And it also means fewer people contribute to the economy because they have no job. So this is all one big dumpster fire right now. And if the stock market's going down, let's not forget that retirement accounts are losing value as well. And with fewer Americans working and fewer of them able to retire, where does that leave people? So you can see how these programs that end up subsidizing housing for people who truly can't afford it, who never should have got those loans to begin with, ends up taking its toll throughout the entire economy. It has a ripple effect through everything. And it even hurts people that didn't do anything wrong. If you're a homeowner that did easily qualify for your house and didn't have a single mortgage payment missed or subsidized by the government, but say life happens, you just need to move for work or you're going through divorce or whatever, well, now the entire housing market is being flushed down the toilet and your home value is declining as well, which means that you might be in a position where you might have to sell your home for a loss. So even if you didn't do anything wrong, you pay for the sins of everybody else. So the situation snowballs completely out of control and everyone's affected by it. And you know what? All of these costs that it takes in order to basically make a household run have gotten so far out of control at the same time that all this is going on. That's another thing that puts people in a position to sell. But over the years, buying a home was always promoted as being, the family jewel, the family asset. This is the family home. Basically, there's been this life cycle of how homes have been treated in the United States, and it's gone from something like the family home to a place to live, just being a shelter, to now a speculative asset that Wall Street buys and sells and trades just like a stock in the stock market. Everything has been turned into a financial commodity, including housing, and this has also exacerbated the issue with the housing market, because not only have we had so many people get loans that shouldn't have gotten them, and people being artificially able to stay in their homes, but the massive injection of cash into the housing market from institutional investors has made the problem 10 times worse. Then, of course, short-term rentals became a thing. When Airbnb came on the scene, everybody was trying to build their little mini empire of short-term rentals and, make their millions, so to speak. This turned the single-family home market into even more of a speculative bubble than it already was before. But now, because of the sheer costs, of the sheer amount that people have to pay to own a home, how much the costs have gone up, owning your home is no longer an asset. In fact, it never really was if you're not renting it out and collecting a net monthly income from that property. But a lot of people used to think of their home as an asset, but now it is nothing more than an expensive liability. Property taxes have soared, homeowners insurance rates have soared, home repair costs have soared, HOA fees have soared, special assessment fees have soared. Anything related to upkeep on a home has gone up in price tremendously. We're literally in a situation right now where a major repair on your house, say a roof, especially a metal roof, an expensive metal roof here in Florida, can cost more than what somebody used to pay for a house 40, 50 years ago. Just the roof now is more than that house even cost back then. On top of that, you have a lot of the brand new homes being built with much lower quality than they ever used to build them in the past. They're built quickly and as cheaply as possible with relatively unskilled labor. People find all sorts of flaws and mistakes with these homes. And even though they're supposed to be under warranty, a lot of times the builders fail to show up to perform those warranty services. But we are seeing a situation where the housing market's going to come down, guys. Zillow just came out with their revised housing market forecast, and they are forecasting that every single market throughout the entire country is going to see a price decline this year, which is kind of surprising to hear from a real estate company like Zillow. Usually Zillow or Redfin, they never come out and say stuff like this. They want to try to paint as rosy of a picture as possible for the housing market. Whether or not that actually happens is yet to be seen. The year's not even halfway over yet, but it's safe to say that a lot of markets are going to see year-over-year price declines this year if you haven't already. And I just want to point out one last thing that I think might be kind of obvious at that point, but maybe not for so many people. Everybody's complaining that home prices haven't come down enough yet. And you have to understand that if you put yourself in the mindset of one of these sellers that's experiencing all the problems I just listed here in this video, like your home value is going down while your expenses are going up, you could be flirting with the idea of potentially losing a job, or maybe you already did lose a job. And considering the fact that most people's net worth is tied up into their home, they are extremely attached and extremely headstrong on getting the highest possible dollar amount when it comes to selling that home. So people don't want to face reality when the market is hitting a downturn, because this is almost everything people have in many cases. Besides maybe a retirement portfolio, their home value is it. So if they don't get the amount of money they need to sell that house, this is a devastating blow to someone's personal finances. And so when somebody in this position needs to lower the price of their house in order to get it sold, that is a chunk of their net worth that is going by the wayside. And people who are on the lower end of the financial spectrum, every time they have to make that price cut, are seeing a much bigger decrease in their net worth versus somebody like around here that owns one of these $2 or $3 million houses. Oh, I had to cut the price by $300K to sell it. It's not as big of a deal because it's a smaller percentage of their overall net worth. So something to keep in mind as you see sellers being stubborn on the housing market and reluctant to lower prices. A lot of it is due to this situation that a lot of their net worth is wrapped up in the value of their home. So keep that in mind. And to give you another real world example of what I'm talking about here, in New York State, there is a village named Fredonia that is looking at a 65% tax increase in this year's budget proposal. Already last year, they hiked property taxes in Fredonia 6%. Now they're looking at a 65% increase, guys. People who live in Fredonia are saying they have never seen anything like this before. The initial proposal was that they were going to increase taxes there by 55%, but then they said no, because that would lead to essential departments being hurt. So they're proposing that they raise it by 65% instead. The mayor of Fredonia is saying the only way that they could see moving forward where we can reduce costs is to eliminate the police. Think about that, guys. Eliminate the police. Also eliminate the fire department and to stop plowing the streets. So that's the only way they're going to be able to not raise the taxes there. Think about that. This increase in taxes would equal the average homeowner in Fredonia increasing their property tax bill by over $550 more than last year. And raising the property taxes obviously places a big financial burden on any homeowner, especially if you're already strapped for cash. Also, the village of Fredonia had to borrow about $800,000 just to get through its current budget. So as you guys can see, it is a giant mess out there. All of these places are having these so-called budget shortfalls where, magically now it costs 65% more to run the city than it did before. And I understand there's inflation, cost of everything goes up, guys, but there are inflated salaries. There's a lot of bloat when it comes to government, a lot of useless employees that don't really do much, that get paid a lot, on top of the fact that there's little oversight in how the money is used and spent because they don't care. It's not their money personally. It's like, yeah, well, if this didn't work out, well, who cares? We just lost a couple $100,000 there. No big deal, This is how government operates. And because of that loose standard of operation, everybody has to pay in the form of increased property taxes.